What's up everybody, I am Brandon, and we got a buttload of video game news to talk about today. Over this last weekend, there was quite a bit of buzz around Forspoken and the Final Fantasy VII Remake on PC, both being placed at that $69.99 price point. Obviously, this has been a very big conversation in the game space as of recently because last year, PlayStation was one of the first people to decide that they were going to start selling all their first-party games at that $69.99 price point, and it got a lot of other people in the game industry sort of talking about what should games cost? Should they start costing more? Should they cost less? Why are we spending money on all this junk in the first place? We're going to go through all that and more on another episode of Game Corner. Really quick everybody, if you like what I do, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I won't waste any more of your time. So kicking this whole thing off, obviously the big issue over this last weekend was a lot of people complaining that that $69.99 price point is just too expensive. It has been kind of beating around on the internet since last year when PlayStation started selling their games at that price point, and a lot of other people in the industry kind of started taking after that. You saw Battlefield and people like Call of Duty even doing the same. So obviously that brought up the bigger conversation about what games cost and what value you're getting out of them and how that contributes to the cost. And I thought it'd be kind of interesting to do something a little different today and kind of dig more deep into that and see if maybe we can kind of dissect it and figure out what the right price for video games are. So first things first, back in 2005, Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo actually all got together in one building and had a conversation about what games should cost. And they all came to the idea that it should bump up from that $49.99 price point up to that $59.99 price point. And obviously since then, it's been the exact same way. Even to this day, most games cost $59.99. Or at least new games. This is one of the first times that we got sort of a standardized price across the whole industry. Obviously, like I said, $49.99 was pretty common back before that. However, it was mostly a Wild West even before that point. We could go back and look at the prices of games from like 1980, 1990, so on, but I really don't think that would get at the deeper point here about modern game pricing. And funny enough, you're kind of seeing that nowadays actually with all these different sized games all sort of being priced at different points depending on whether or not they have online functionality, how long the game is, who made it, and where it was made. Obviously there's a lot that goes into that, but we can say for certain that most people are willing to pay that $59.99 price point for a new video game that they want. So moving on from there, obviously this is where the big issue comes up, where people are having to spend that extra $10 to buy those games that usually costed $59.99, and obviously now that they're having to spend more money on these games, that is a shock to the system. And don't get me wrong, I'm totally with you guys. I obviously don't want to spend more money on games. I'm constantly hunting for deals and looking for ways that I can spend less money on my hobby, obviously. That being said, if we look back at the NDP for last month in November, we can actually see that 6 of those 20 games on the top 20 list are at that $69.99 price point. That's actually 33% of the games on that list. That's a pretty high number of games to be at that $10 more price point that people are still seemingly paying for without any problem. Obviously, we can see that game sales are down by about 10% overall, but we can sort of assume that that's part due to that hardware shortage that we're seeing being a big deal all over every industry right now. Seeing as how video game sales in general have been up tremendously over the last 2 years. And this kind of gets us into the point where value comes from what people think they're getting out of the product. Value is based solely on what you want out of your money. And on that note, I'm biased. I am more than willing to spend $70 on something that I want. In fact, I just did it recently when I bought Returnal for $70. I really love Housemarque, I really love action games, and the whole setting of that game appealed to me in a way that I was more than willing to throw them the money. And obviously a lot of people are going to look at that game and see it's a roguelike, you sort of just do the same thing over and over and over again, and they probably aren't willing to put the money into that product. And hey, that's fine. If that's what you decide to do, that is the value you've decided to place on that game, and it's not worth that price point. Of course, we've all been there though. You know, when there's that shiny new object, that shiny new video game that you've been waiting years and years to play, and it finally is here, and you're waiting all night to play it, and it costs $69.99. Like, what are you gonna do? Just not buy the game? Probably not. And if we break it down even further, a lot of games cost way more than that nowadays. Especially look at something like these live service games or even MMOs. They've been charging you for monthly services and expansions for decades now. And once again, if you've seen the value in Final Fantasy XIV and you understand that you're paying that monthly subscription, but you get to play that game to your heart's content, and you know that you have friends there and you have a whole life inside that game, you're obviously willing to spend that money without even giving it a second thought. Of course, you're always going to have people who are looking for a deal. There are some people that just get off on hunting down that deal and getting a game for way less than it was originally priced for. And once again, more power to you. If that's your game, play it, my man. But I think in the long run, none of us are really saving any extreme amounts of money that are really getting us anywhere further in life by not spending a little bit more here or there on the things that we enjoy spending money on. This is kind of where these console warriors and these PC Master Race people kind of get on my nerves a little bit, because they're just so willing to go on the internet and complain about how they have to spend more money on video games, but you know they're going to turn around and just do it anyway. The fact is, people who are not willing to spend that $10 extra on a game, once again, either don't see the value in that game or they're children and don't have disposable income. Now, does that mean I think that these big corporations deserve 10 more of my dollars? God, no, of course not. They already have tons of money. I don't think they need to make any price changes at all. Like I mentioned earlier, though, we're sort of in this Wild West area again, with everything from indie games to these sort of mid-tier AA games, all the way up to our quadruple AAA exclusives. Every single game has its own individual value, and each game I think needs to be treated differently because of that. If we look at Halo Infinite, for instance, they originally released the multiplayer for totally free. Anyone can get on right now, just like you can with Fortnite or Apex Legends, and play Halo without any cost up front. But that sort of takes a little bit of value away from the Halo Infinite campaign when you know that not only are you not getting all the features like co-op up front, but the multiplayer is free for you to go get into at any point in time. That becomes even more complicated when you can pay $10 for Game Pass every month to play Halo instantaneously, beat the campaign, and then just go and play multiplayer as much as you want. So that begs the question, should Halo Infinite cost $60? Probably not. Or if they were gonna break it down this much, maybe they could have changed how they were pricing these games a little bit. That being said, we all know that we're gonna get on Halo Infinite multiplayer at some point, see a cool piece of armor, and throw them the $5 for it. Especially if we're already spending tons of our time playing their free game anyway. And now they've got us hooked on Game Pass, so it's like we're already paying them. So in that case, we're already paying them the money that we would have paid them in the first place. I guess my point is that there's a bigger issue here than just these game publishers charging $10 more for their games. I think the bigger issue is finding what each game's value is and whether or not we're willing to place our money into that. Every game should be priced different. I'm fine with having a default across the board price for different sorts of things, like indie games being about $20, AAA games being that $70 price point. I'm cool with that. But we need to start thinking about these price points differently depending on what we're getting out of our packages here. So what should video games cost? Do game publishers deserve more of our money? What about indie studios? Aren't there already tons of games that already cost more than $69.99? And are gamers just big whiny babies? I mean, yeah, and no to all these questions. This is a super nuanced situation, and I think going out there and just bitching and complaining about every single game that costs $69.99 is a waste of time. Because honestly, we don't even know anything about Forspoken yet. Maybe it's gonna come out and be a fucking banger, and obviously we'd be more than willing to pay the money at that point. And as for Final Fantasy VII Remake, we know that it's starting to not run very well on PC right now, so that $69.99 price point might not be worth it for a lot of us because the game runs like shit. Once again, we gotta look at all these different things individually instead of trying to group them all together into the same thing. Anyway, that's about all I have to talk when it comes to video game pricing and value. I guess just to kind of wrap a big bow on this, I don't necessarily have a problem paying more money for a game that I want to play and is worth paying that money for. I'm even more than willing to throw money at a free-to-play game if it means that I'm putting the time and the effort in. What I don't think we should do is go online and threaten developers and tell people that we want to fucking kill them and stuff over a game price. Like, it's ridiculous, guys. Like, get your shit together. Anyway, I'm sorry to do something a little different together. I just was like super annoyed by that over the weekend, and I felt like I had to kind of throw my opinion into the ring. So take it or leave it. Let me know what you guys think down below. Are you guys cool at this new price point? Do you think this is way too expensive? Do you agree with me that maybe we should kind of look at everything differently in this sort of a nuanced situation? Let me know down below. Anyway, I'm Brandon. This was the episode of Game Corner on game pricing. Have a kick-ass week.